Time now for the Daily Answer, sponsored by Salem Surround on The Answer Now TV.
Yes, it is. Mark Davis in for Chris. Right there, looking there, the sun is up outside the building in which I sit. That is a landscape from 660 AM, The Answer, right here in thriving DFW. And wherever you are, thanks for watching, thanks for listening. The listening takes place on fine radio stations across the Salem Radio Network, and the watching takes place on the Salem News Channel. Get the app, click the button, watch the spectacles unfold before you all day long. Thanks, and glad you are here. Chris will be back tomorrow. In this hour, we're going to talk at the bottom of this hour with Aaron McGuire about some Republican strategies, just how to do smart things, how to keep accentuate the positives, as the old song title goes, while navigating a landscape filled with negatives, landmines placed by a hostile media culture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In news coming off the weekend, obviously we're talking about the nagging tentacles of the Epstein story, talking about Obamagate and whether that goes anywhere, talking about some Israel and Gaza, all kinds of things going on in the news, and you can grab a line at 855-STIGAL, 855-784-4255, and we'll be on the phones with you here in just a moment. As we begin this hour, though, this European Union deal that President Trump struck, it has a lot of really important factors to it, but none perhaps as glowing as the $750 million of energy significance between America and the entire European Union. And so Daniel Turner is the founder and executive director of Power the Future and joins us to talk about that. Daniel, welcome. It's nice to have you. How you doing?
Hi, Mark. Great for having me. Thanks for having me on this morning. Great to be with you.
So listen, let me just ask you, just 30,000 foot level, what is it that strikes you as important and most beneficial to American energy prospects about this deal struck between Trump and the European Union?
Well, I think right off the bat, you have to see the tremendous paradigm shift from the previous administration. We saw Joe Biden go in person to Saudi Arabia and ask them to produce more oil. They actually cut production after that trip in 2022. We saw the Biden administration send emissaries to Venezuela, saying we were going to lift all of their sanctions and asking them to produce more oil. So fast forward to the present day, and now we have an American president who goes around the world, but selling American energy, not asking other countries to produce more so we can buy, but putting America in the dominant seat of selling our energy. And that's just a remarkable change of paradigm, a remarkable shift. And also, we have to remember last year, we saw this a lot during the 2024 presidential debate, when President Trump would often point out how the European Union had spent more buying Russian oil and natural gas through third-party mediaries, right, because they're trying to avoid the sanctions. But they spend more buying Russian oil and gas than they gave to Ukraine to fight Russia in their war. So for really, the European Union's energy policy was subsidizing the very war that they seemed hell-bent on ending. And so, again, just a massive shift of a paradigm shift of saying, all right, we're going to sell our energy and you're going to buy it. And that means you're going to stop buying energy from Russia, which is fueling their war against Ukraine. So just a complete 180 from the previous administration.
So before we even arrive at a long-term benefit for America's energy prospects and America's economy, you get to the notion that this paradigm shift that you describe may deny Russia. I mean, Russia is a big, lumbering third world country with nukes, but they also have a lot of resources, a lot of fossil fuels, and that has kept a lot of European nations on the hook for a relationship with Russia that, in sort of textbook Trumpian style, he comes sweeping in and makes a better deal than Putin ever could make, because Putin's right next door. You can't beat the geography, the convenience of dealing with Russia right next door. Trump just made it more attractive to deal with us.
Absolutely, and that will dry up Russia's finances, and that's why Vladimir Putin didn't invade Ukraine during the first 4 Trump years. One, he was unsure of who Trump was. Trump was a bit of a wild card. He was an unknown known, as Rumsfeld would have said back in the day. But also, Russia just didn't have the money. And that's a big difference when you have energy policies that drive up global energy prices, and the Biden energy policies did that. And then you require people to buy energy from Russia. you made Russia very, very rich and powerful. And then what did they do with their money? They invaded another country. It's all the same paradigm we saw with Iran, right? We lifted all of the sanctions on Iranian oil. They were producing about 500,000 barrels a day under President Trump. They were producing 3.2 million barrels a day under President Biden. And what did Iran do with all their surplus money? Right? Build schools for girls. No, of course not. They invaded Israel, right? They launched October 7th. They armed Hezbollah. They armed Houthi rebels in Yemen. They spread worldwide terrorism. That's what Iran always does with surplus money. So our bad energy policy made some of the world's bad actors worse. It made them richer and it made them more powerful. So we haven't even gotten to why this is good for American energy. But this is good for just world peace and geopolitics and stability. And that's a big win that everyone should celebrate.
And you took me with that answer right to another part of the world that I wanted to talk a little bit about. We obviously have had a little something to say about Iran's nuclear capabilities in the last few weeks. We continue to do business for just about my whole life. We do a lot of business with some folks in a part of the world filled with folks who still want to kill us. The Middle East, I believe, has a promise and a prospect of getting more reasonable under Trump 2.0, but not in Iran. Are we dealing? Let's talk about the Iranian oil industry and Middle Eastern oil in general. Should we be able to wean ourselves from it completely between the United States and Canada? We have a big continent. We didn't used to get so much oil from a hostile Middle East. So where do you think that's going?
Well, I think we're headed in that right direction. We don't need the Middle East's oil at all. And America not buying their oil puts them in a vulnerable position, and vulnerable nations are less violent in that sense. They don't have money for their military. They don't have money for terrorism. Iran's in a bad shape right now. Their inflation rate is running around 30%, and the rial is down, I believe, over 50% from just 2 years ago. So Iran's economy is hurting. And I don't want to see people suffer at all. I don't want to see Iranian people suffer, but I do want to see the Iranian regime be part of the world order, that they're not going to continue to launch terrorism around the world. I do want to see the Iran regime crumble, because it's an evil regime that has brought misery to its own people and to the world around us. And a way to do that is to stop buying their stuff. It also, I find it remarkable, one of the lessons we never seem to learn from the great Ronald Reagan, he didn't trade with the Soviet Union, right? He called them an evil empire, but he didn't say, and because they're an evil empire, we're going to bring all their students to our universities to study, and we're going to buy their stuff, and we're going to... No, but we do that with Russia. We do that, or Biden did that with Iran. We do it with China. I think ending trade with our enemies is a better thing than what we've been doing for 30 years, which is making our enemies richer by turning a blind eye to their evil regime because we want cheap crap.
Last couple of minutes with a group called Power the Future, and obviously you're interested in power and interested in the future. How much of that, what does the marketplace seem to say versus what does politics say about renewables? Europe is just very, they love them some renewables, and I'm not against wind or solar or any of these things. I just don't want to have it happen at the exclusion of, at the intentional sidelining of fossil fuels of the petroleum industry. So what does this deal do to the way the pie is sliced of how Europe and America do oil versus non-oil?
Well, Europe is in a precarious situation when it comes to their power and their electric grid, because they have embraced the wind and solar and renewables so much that they are paying over 3 times what America pays for electricity. We saw the collapse of the entire grid on the Iberian Peninsula last month. And the European Union basically is in recession. Germany is in a flat-out recession. They're in decline, and the reason why is because that storied and hailed German manufacturing can't afford to operate its factories because utility prices, electricity prices are so darn high. And they're high because of unreliable wind and unreliable solar. I think the energy President Trump is selling them is good old fossil fuels. And that's what Europe needs. And quite frankly, that's what America needs as well. I am not an all-of-the-above energy person. I don't want to embrace energy policies that are unreliable, untested, and very expensive. And Biden did that for 4 years, and all we saw was expensive goods, higher inflation, high gas prices, 30% rise in electricity prices nationwide. I don't know what was so good about going green other than that talking point. So, no, I oppose any of that nonsense, and I think President Trump does too.
Daniel Turner, Power of the Future. Thank you, sir. Time well spent. Always a pleasure. Thanks for all the good work that you and your group do. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
That's Daniel Turner. Quote of the day, I am not an all-of-the-above guy. That's a term you'll hear a lot. Like, hey, listen, oil, solar, wind. The extent to which I am an all-of-the-above guy is allow everything and let the marketplace determine how much fossil fuel, how much wind, how much solar, rather than having government prod people toward certain choices.
For full shows, live and on demand, it's Salem News Channel. Stay informed anytime, anywhere with the Salem News Channel at 9:30 a.m. TheAnswer.com. This has been The Daily Answer, sponsored by Salem Surround on The Answer Now TV.
It's Chris Stigall, and you're watching The Answer Now TV.